Now, I am the kind of person who feel my life really got started the day I got married. Not that anyone who is single, your life hasn't started. I'm speaking for me personally. I don't remember my life before that. It was like when Rochelle and I got married, now I had a real good mirror of like where I'm not so good, where I can improve, and there was a lot of it. So my life really got started when we got married, and even more so when Marino came on the scene. It was like everything felt a little bit deeper now. Everything meant more. And one of the things that I have learned since my life began is being a good communicator on the platform does not immediately mean you're a good communicator at home. I don't know how many of you have found yourself in the middle of a fight where they say, well, you said this, and you're like, I said no such thing. That's not real. I didn't say that. Yeah, Tommy, yeah? I'm shocked at our ability, while we don't really like fight, but we communicate, and we're both people who we don't get mad, we get hurt. So our fights are always like low grade because we're both like, how could you do that to me? But it is funny how many times I can say, how could you get that from what I said? And she'll go, how could you say that when you meant this? And I'm just like, this is crazy. So I've learned, just because you can communicate, a sermon you've prepared for a week, doesn't mean you're the best communicator all the time. And how many of you know that sometimes people can pick things up from things you're saying that you never meant to say? There are things you don't even believe. Where they're like, I just can't believe you'd say that. You're like, here's how I know I didn't say that. I've never even had that thought before. That, I don't even believe that. Thank you, Pastor Armando. Thank you. You're like, I've never even had that thought in my life, so there's no way I said that. I think sometimes good messages by accident can communicate things they never meant to communicate. And I think it's important sometimes to look at the ripple effects of things we believe because they sometimes can carry things we don't believe and we don't mean. There's a good phrase right now out there that we use a lot. We use it, I use it, you use it. I mean, it's a beautiful phrase. It's got a lot of value and beauty to it. And it's actually become kind of like one of the big staples for evangelism in the Christian church now. I've seen churches plaster this on their walls, on their invite cards, on their social media. We've seen pastors preach this. I'm telling you, at some point, somebody in the Christian faith, if you're in this room and you've been a Christian for like 10 minutes, you've probably said something akin to, it's not a religion, it's a relationship, right? And there's so much beauty to it. And it is true that what we do with God, what we have is a relationship with Jesus. And it's a beautiful statement. In fact, especially if you're like guilt-ridden today. If you come into church and you're emotionally dragging yourself into church because you just feel so broken by what's going on in the world and you feel so worthless, and when you feel that way and we come and we tell you that it's not about religion, which means it's not about performance, which means your bad behavior does not disqualify you from the grace of God. And we read that verse in Ephesians, we read the verses in Romans, that it is not, a result of our behavior. The grace of God is a gift, an undeserving gift. We've heard this message before. It's beautiful and it's freeing. And we leave here saying, oh my gosh, my behavior does not disqualify me. My past does not disqualify me. It does not matter who I was right before I got here. I could make a choice today to receive the free gift of grace. We've felt this message, been encouraged by this message, correct? And in that, the idea of religion gets destroyed and we rip it apart and we try to communicate to our friends, at my church, it's really all about a relationship. We're not really talking about the religion. We're not a religion, we're a relationship. And we're trying to communicate that there's no system of shame or judgment here. That we absolutely, we do have open arms to anybody. We do want you to come. Even Jesus, come to me as you are. And little by little, the more we communicate this, all of a sudden people start making famous trending YouTube videos back in 2012 that's like, why I love Jesus, but I hate religion. And we buy into this and we're like, this is beautiful and yeah, let's go. And it's beautiful. And then that guy goes and writes a book and it's a bestseller. And it's beautiful. Because what we have with Jesus is so much better than any religion on the planet. But I think if we're not careful, that message can start to communicate things to our heart of hearts that it does not mean, never meant. But we start to believe it at a deep level. And I think the transition goes like this. Because of the grace of God, your past does not matter, right? That's where it starts. But here's the crazy thing about your past. Your past can easily become your present and easily become your future. That can start to mean your bad actions don't matter. So we go from your past doesn't matter, and then that can just translate into your bad actions don't matter. And we see it that people in the church, they come and they continue to live a life of sin. They continue to think that I can just ask forgiveness and move on and things are good. And you know what? Honestly, to some degree, there is truth there. The grace of God is bigger than our sin. Like it just is. So we start with my past doesn't disqualify me, and then it just naturally starts to mean my bad behavior does not disqualify me. But that starts to mean my behavior doesn't matter. And I think it's a short line from my behavior doesn't matter to I don't matter. And I think we have a lot of Christians walking around here thinking they don't matter. I think when we come and we say that the month of November, we're starting Big Give, and the whole month of November is about taking your offerings and going out and being a blessing. Don't give it to the church. Don't take your offerings. Your tithe stays in the house, mainly because that's the principle. But the offering, go be a blessing to somebody, we start thinking, I don't have enough. I don't even tithe. And before you know it, we've gone from the grace of God is free, undeserving, and your past does not disqualify you. And it trickles all the way into thinking our behavior doesn't matter. So we don't matter. I was preaching somewhere recently. I was invited to speak to FCA at for the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And so I went, preached a message, and when it was over, I'd like to stick around and shake some hands, and mainly because I'm a football fan. So I like to shake some hands, and sure enough, this one kid approached me, and he just looked like this big athlete. So he walks over, and we just start talking, and he's like, you mind if I ask you a question? And I'm like, not at all. And have you ever been asked a question that was actually more of a monologue that ended with, yeah, so there's that? That's what he did. I was like, so what's the question? But he started to tell me about how he felt the Lord called him to move to Miami and to try out for the team. And he just felt like that's what the Lord wanted him to do. So he did that. And then he tried to walk on for the team. He didn't make it. And so he was struggling with his purpose. He was struggling with the idea of hearing God. And he was like, did I miss this idea of purpose? And he went to a pastor in his life back home. And somehow in their interaction, he went asking his pastor about his purpose. And he left saying, God doesn't need me. And somehow in his mind, God doesn't need me turns into no one needs me. And that turned into, I have no value. A younger version of me would get so mad at that pastor. I'm like, how in the world? But as I mature, I realize sometimes I thought a conversation went one way, and the person left hearing something entirely different. You see, that's my fear with this whole having to belittle religion in order to celebrate grace. In order to communicate the value of our relationship, sadly, people feel they have to destroy the other option. And we see this across the board. It's like the other political party has zero truth to it because my party has all the truth. We're so absolute, black and white. And sadly, that means it's only grace and there's no religion. And if we believe that, what are we going to do with like the 700 verses in the New Testament all about our behavior? What are you going to do with 2 Peter or 1 Peter, where he says that supplement your faith with these qualities so your faith is not ineffective? It's like, oh. You see, I think if we're not careful, the whole relationship over a religion, even though it is the complete and total truth, it can sadly start to make us feel like we don't matter. All that matters is God. All that matters is what he does, and we don't matter. The longer we live, those dreams of making a difference become completely destroyed because we feel we need someone to make a difference for us. And now the idea of being of any use suddenly starts to go out the window. We think we're too old to make a difference. Too much has passed me by. I've fallen too short to be a blessing. I don't have enough resources to be a blessing. I've done too much damage. I couldn't possibly be a good influence to my family. I've done too much damage. Before you know it, a great truth elevating our relationship with Jesus above anything else can find a way to make us feel like we don't matter. If you consider for a second, like the first, second, and third place at the Olympics, you've got first here, second a little lower, third a lot lower. Sometimes the relationship makes it seem like there's no second and third place. There's nothing else of value. And we forget, no, there's a lot of value to religion. There's a lot of value to what you do. In fact, contrary to most of what we believe, you matter a lot. Like you, specifically you, exactly where you are. And I hope for a second you would be able to identify yourself in the entire group of people. Because we can come in here, lose all individuality, and we speak to one big sea of people. But for one moment, I would ask that you would press past that, recognize who you are, your name, what you're struggling with, what you came in, and recognize in the midst of all of that, you matter. There's a story in Mark 14 that I think I tend to overlook, but there's this absolute beauty to this story. So I want to start reading it. It's Mark chapter 14. I'm going to start in verse 3. This is getting to the end of Jesus' life. In fact, according to Mark, it's 3 pages until Jesus' life is over. So he's coming to the end of his life. And it says, Mark 14 verse 3. While he was at Bethany in the house of Simon the leper, as he was reclining at table, a woman came with an alabaster flask of ointment of pure nard, very costly, and she broke the flask and poured it over his head. There were some who said to themselves indignantly, "Why was the ointment wasted like that? For this ointment could have been sold for more than 300 denarii, which is actually 300 full days of day wages." Basically a year of income. Remove all the weekends, this is more than a year of income. And they scolded her because they thought it should have been given to the poor. But Jesus said, "Leave her alone. Why do you trouble her? She's done a beautiful thing to me, for you always have the poor with you. And whenever you want, you can do good for them. But you will not always have me." We know that this story is actually about a woman who is being used of God to prepare Jesus for his crucifixion and his burial. That's the purpose of the story. But can I just paint a picture for you of the story so we don't forget the human element to it? You have a woman that scholars believe, because Luke tells the same story, we hear her name in certain accounts, we have a picture of who she was, that she was a woman of the night, that she was in a very sinful business, that her life, the way she would have earned these wages, not the best. And she walks into a room. We know in the room are Pharisees. people that drag women caught in adultery by their hair into the streets and throw them before Jesus. Pharisees that, I'll never forget when I was in Israel, I had made the mistake of putting meat on a table that was kosher. And a woman came running in, screaming, took the plates with the food, threw everything out, was all mad. These Pharisees would have operated like this. They would have been overly attentive to making sure everything they did fit the book, and complete and total shame of those who didn't. And they're in that room. We also know that the apostles were there. So Peter and all of them were in this room. And even crazier than that, we know that in this room was the physical presence of God through the all-man, all-God Jesus. And let me ask you for one quick second, what would you do if you knew Jesus was in the other room? Just think about it for a second. Like, actually, I know there's part of us emotionally that's like, I would run in and hug him and ask him so many questions. But in reality, what would you do if God in flesh was in the next room? I'll never forget a time we went to a Dolphins practice, and Gabby's next to me, and she nudges me, and she goes, "That's Tua's dad." And I'm like, and he starts walking towards us, and she's bumping me, and she's like, "Say something, say something, say something." And I'm like, so sure enough, he walks by, and Gabby did her best Pastor Steve impression. She went, how are you? Big fan. My name's Gabby. Huge fan of your son. And the worst part is that she did this across my body. So they're here, and I'm... So Gabby met Tua's dad. I did not. The father of a quarterback made me freeze. Can you imagine the physical manifestation of God? This woman is on the outside of a door knowing a whole lot of judgment for a woman like her is inside that room. We even know they scolded her for what she did. But she found a way to push past that threshold and to pour her oil all over Jesus. You know, it's kind of crazy because the way that life works is you have certain dreams. I want to make this much money. And then you make that money, you hold it in your hand, and you're like, this is not as much money as this is. And you want more and more. And you start to look down on the smaller beginnings, things that, man, $100 pair of shoes back in the day would have been like, I'm the coolest dude in this place. Now I'm like, give me the $100 pair of shoes. I'm going to go wear it as we hunt. You know, like you start to look down on the things that used to mean a lot. Don't you think this woman is sitting there with a 1 year worth of her life standing there before God, and she's like, this is nothing. It's only 1 year. This is nothing. This isn't enough. To bless the guy who's walking around healing everybody? This isn't enough. Yet she found a way to push past all of that. And what's beautiful is that in the middle of her being scolded, Jesus is like, hold on. She's done a good thing. Can I tell you? Sometimes we just feel like we don't have enough to do a good thing. We question what we have and the actual amount of good it will do. Paying for somebody's groceries, I've only got an extra 20, 30 bucks. That's not gonna really make a dent in their life. It's gonna make things awkward. What, I'm gonna have to go and be like, okay, so only do the $50 and then put the other 30 on me. And we get in our head about all the moving parts and realize, 30, 40 bucks, that's not enough. Going and blessing a police officer or blessing a random person in a restaurant, we feel like, especially in Miami, we're gonna be met with resistance, not acceptance. We start to think about things in the large sense of the globe and think me buying one person's coffee is not gonna make a difference. And can I tell you, 1 year of wages for a woman of the night does not make a difference to he who owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. Yet he said, what she's done is a good thing. Metro Life, I want you to know you have enough to do a good thing. Fathers, you matter. Be present with your family because you matter. Doesn't matter what's happened up to this point. What matters is today and moving forward. Be present with your family. You have enough to do a good thing. You have enough to do a good thing. Moms, I don't know what emotionally you're having to deal with at times. I don't know what weight is on you, but I do know this. You have the resources to figure it out and enough to do a good thing. I don't know what your bill situation is. I don't know what your income situation is, but I do know one of the only women praised for an offering was the woman who gave 2 mites. You have enough to do a good thing. You have enough to do a good thing because you matter. Metro Life, you matter. I don't know how people can go through our STEPS program, hear about how many people, how many bodies we need to serve, and think they have enough. I don't matter. It's probably one of the bigger jokes to Pastor Armando and myself, that we don't need more people. You standing at the door, greeting people, is more than enough to do a good thing. You know, they need this amount of money for the roof. My $100 isn't gonna do anything. Metro Life, you have more than enough to do a good thing. You have more than enough. Jesus actually says, wherever the gospel is preached, they're gonna talk about her. You have enough to do enough to be remembered. So I want to encourage you today. No matter where you are, what's going on, from this moment forward, there's a reason your feet can't face in the opposite direction. With where you're going towards, you have enough to do something that's good. And so here comes James. James would have been the first Christian celebrity before Paul. Because if you think about it, James is the brother of Jesus. Jesus resurrects and goes to heaven. John's taking care of the mom. The only one moving around doing life is the brother of Jesus, James. He would have been so converted by Jesus actually resurrecting. He would have been like, oh my gosh, my mom was right. Joseph's not his dad. Like, he made it. He would have been the first celebrity because he would have been the brother of Jesus. And James tells us there's a religion of no value, but there is a religion of value, and that's to take care of the widows and the orphans. The first celebrity of the New Testament walks around and says, the religion that God deems pure is taking care of widows and orphans. And can I be honest, and maybe this is a little of a biblical leap, but I think when you look at the world today, if they don't know God, they're separated. As the bride of Christ, they're separated from God. They're separated from the groom. They're a widow. If somebody doesn't know God, they're a widow because they're separated from Jesus, the bridegroom. If they don't know God, they're separated from their father. They're an orphan. Can I tell you, as those of us, the bride of Christ, married to Jesus, reunited with our Father, we need to go take care of the widows and the orphans. And James does not have an audience to the resource plentiful. He does not say that to an audience that's mainly Jewish or mainly Gentile. He says it to us all. You have enough to take care of the widows and the orphans. So I want to end with this today. There was a song that I listened to growing up. Like oil upon your feet, like wine for you to drink, like water from my heart, I pour my love on you. If praise is like perfume, I lavish mine on you, till every drop is gone, I'll pour my love on you. Does anybody hear that song? Oil upon your feet, like wine for you to drink, like water from my heart, I pour my love on you. If praise is like perfume, I lavish mine on you, till every drop is gone, I'll pour my love on you. How many of you would love to think like this woman? How many of you would love to think like this woman? How many of you would love to think that like this woman, we could cross a threshold into the physical presence of Jesus, of He who died for us, bore our sin, resurrected, and now makes us reunited with God, grafts us into the family of God? How many of us would love to lavish our love on His physical presence? How many would love that? Come on, how many of you would love? Well, guess what? You can't. Guess what? You can't. You cannot pour your love on Jesus the way this woman did. But the poor you always have with you. We could pour our love, the love we want to pour on Jesus, we can pour on His bride. We can pour on His family. We could pour that same desire to pour our love on God, to thank Him, to love Him, to even try a little bit to bless Him the way that He's blessed us. He's begging us to turn to our family, to turn to our church, to turn to our community, and pour that love on them. When you go and pay for someone's groceries, you know what you're doing? You're breaking a flask of oil and you're pouring it on the feet of Jesus. Why? Because Jesus says, you know what? When I was hungry, you didn't feed me. When I was sick, you did not clothe me. When I was in prison, you did not visit me. And they're like, when did those things happen? When you didn't do it for the least of these, you didn't do it for me. Meanwhile, these people, when I was sick, they clothed me. When I was hungry, they fed me. When I was in prison, they visited me. And they're like, when did we do that? When you did it for the least of these. When you and I go and take care of our community this month, we're pouring our love on Jesus by caring for the least of these. When we decide, you know what, I'm not gonna get caught up in outrage culture, needing to be angry in order to care. I'm gonna put that aside and just love the people in front of me. I'm gonna stop with the what about people. Oh, really? But what about people this? What about people that? I don't care about what about people. I gotta be honest. I don't care about people in California. Why? I'm not there. How can I care for them? I have to care for the people in my community. Maybe through caring for my neighbor and him caring for his neighbor, I'll care for people in California. But how in the world can I care for people not in my vicinity when I'm not caring for people in my vicinity? I have to bless the people of God right where I am. And I have enough to do that. I have enough to pour my love for Jesus onto the person behind me in line. Do you know we have people that spend their Saturdays going to the homes of some of our widows, doing whatever project we can. We have 2 women that were recently tragically widowed in the last year. Men who were serving and leading in our church, and it was so tragic. We reached out to them lately as our church has been so good at taking care of them. We've reached out to them lately. What needs do you have? And they kept shooting back, we're good. And we'd be like, no. What needs do you have? What faucet isn't working? Like what needs to be replaced? And they're like, guys, we're good. That's you. Taking care of the widows and the orphans. You know, a couple weeks ago, my wife, Marino, got it first, that 24-hour bug, passed it to Rochelle, she passed it to me, but when she had it, she's like, I just need some soup. So I ran to Publix to get some soup. My son was throwing up the night before, my wife's throwing up that day. I'm getting ready to, I just don't know it yet. And I'm sitting there in line, getting ready to pay. It's gonna cost $9. And there was a little older woman in front of me. She saw that all I had was a soup. And she said, pay for his too. I'm like, you don't even realize what this $7 or $8 soup is gonna mean for my home. My wife, who was up all night with my child throwing up, who's now feeling it herself, who's got to boot and rally because she's got to take care of me. We just don't know it yet. And here you are blessing us. You know what I did? I took all her groceries. I put them in the cart. I walked all the way to her car. I put them in there. And I'm getting ready. I'm like, okay, ask her if she wants to pray. Like, pray for her. Give her what you can. And as I do, she's like, I want you to have a really great day now. Bye. She just blessed me. Has no idea who I am. Has no idea I'm up here preaching to y'all, talking about her right now. A $9 soup. All I'm telling you is you have enough to do a good thing. And this month of November, for the big give, let's focus on doing that good thing for people we don't know. Let's figure that out for the neighbor we just keep refusing to talk to. The guy who thinks my name is Rick. You don't need to have more than enough to do more than enough. You just need 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. So I encourage you to A, recognize how much you matter. You, right now, what you do, it matters. You getting here today with all obstacles, guys, that matters. You've made a difference. If your kid goes to youth group, you are redirecting legacy every time you drive that kid to youth group. When you serve in the kids ministry, you are changing legacy. When you greet someone at the door, you're tearing down walls you didn't even know were there. You matter. You have more than enough to do a good thing. So let's pour our love on God's family. Father, I thank you so much for every person in the room, and I pray that you would take each and every one of these words spoken by a simple man, but make them so much more so they can see it's not my opinion that they matter, but rather it is the opinion of heaven, that each and every one of them matters, and they have more than enough to do a good thing. In Jesus' name I pray, amen. Be blessed, Metro.
Hey there, if you enjoyed this video from Metro Life, then we have more content for you to enjoy. We've got music, podcasts, sermons, and messages from our team. We believe that relationship matters, and getting to know one another is a key part of those relationships. So get to know us by looking around this channel. Like, comment, and subscribe, and we look forward to meeting you soon.